There is a pay gap, but it doesn't exist solely because of gender. Now, sexism does exist, but it's not as prevalent in regard to the pay gap as I previously thought after reading this book.
The bottom line is,
read a book, people.
Today I'm discussing a few of the things I learned from the book Why Men Earn More, which I heard about on Joe Rogan's podcast when he had Jordan Peterson on, and they were discussing differences between the sexes, and naturally the gender wage gap came up in this conversation. Prior to reading this book, I had heard a few things about the pay gap as to why it existed. A lot of the reasons that were mentioned were purely to do with sexism. I didn't really think anything of it and just kind of went with the flow of that line of thinking, but there was always something about it that grabbed at me, and I thought to myself that, is this issue more complex than what I'm being led to believe? I mean, who knows? So I just thought that reading the book might offer a perspective that I hadn't thought about and a level of analysis that went deeper than what you saw in a lot of the, to use a horrible cliche, mainstream media outlets. Overall, the pay gap ranges from about 10 to 18% between men and women. According to the book, this is due to a variety of reasons, not the least of which are differences in personality and the choices that men and women make on their own career paths. Women tend to be attracted to 9-to-5 jobs that offer a shorter commute to work, fewer dangers around the workplace, jobs with less travel, and jobs that don't involve working in inclement weather. Now, there are jobs available to women that offer fewer hazards in the workplace, while also offering pay that is comparable to more hazardous jobs. The problem is that not many women know about these positions, and the author makes the claim that the reason for this is because if women did know about these positions, it would create a bad situation in the political realm, because that would eliminate a problem to solve. Affirmative action policies can be put in place in order to narrow the gap between men and women when it comes to equal pay. But if you narrow that gap and you equalize it, there's no more problem to solve. And if more messaging existed that showed women all of these jobs they could take that had equal pay and fewer hazards, they might actually take them, which would be a problem because then affirmative action would decrease. Or the case for affirmative action would at least weaken. Women also tend to work fewer hours than men. This is especially true if women have a family, because in the first year of having an infant, they have to spend a lot of time and energy into taking care of the infant. But the number of hours worked obviously creates a pay gap in and of itself. Studies show that if you work 45 hours per week, no matter your gender, you make more than somebody who works 42 hours per week. You make 14% more than that person. That 14% difference covers about 70% of the overall pay gap between men and women. Another aspect of families having children, as the wife stays home to take care of the kid in its first year, what you'll see are husbands taking on additional hours at work, therefore getting paid more over time. A lot of times this is done, I'm sure, to compensate for the fact that the woman is not in the workplace for the time she's taking care of the baby. Another point I found interesting is that there are even pay gaps within the same career field. So for example, a computer engineer makes a different amount of money than a chemical engineer. So if you see a headline that says something like, male engineers make more than female engineers, a good practice would be to figure out what their job titles are, their responsibilities, the amount of hours worked, things of that nature, before you claim that sexism is the reason why that there is a pay gap between them. Now, on a personality level, men are more interested in things and women are more interested in people. There was a 2003 Gallup poll that illustrated this difference. A group of teenage boys in this poll chose a career that involved computers as their number one choice. But those careers weren't even in the top 10 for girls. Being an engineer was number 4 for boys, while it also was not in the top 10 for girls. Girls' top choices in this Gallup poll were acting, music, and teaching. Also happened to be what I was interested in. So both sexes make different choices, obviously. So I think it's important to take all of these factors into account. Number of hours worked, hazards on the job, the commute they make to work. I make a long commute to work. I live 4.5 hours from my office. So I think when we're trying to determine if sexism is involved in a pay gap situation, we really need to take a lot of other factors into account before we start to accuse an employer or somebody of being sexist. It's important to listen to those who feel as though that is the issue, but I do believe that there should be, so to speak, a fair trial before we come to any conclusion. Something that's actually rarely mentioned about the pay gap is that there are 40 fields in which women make at least 5% more than men. Of the 15 top paying fields in which women out-earn men, 9 of those are male-dominated. And when you look at the occupations in which women have a bachelor's degree and they out-earn their male counterparts who also have a bachelor's degree, the most surprising find in this book, according to the author, was investment banking. Investment banking is a profession in which women, again with a bachelor's degree, make more than men with bachelor's degrees. And the author found this particularly noteworthy because investment banking is often thought of as like a male-dominated profession in which you might assume that men earn more, but it actually pays women an additional $8,000 per year, or 116% of what men make. If you dive even further into the pay gap, you actually discover that when men and women work less than 40 hours per week, women make more than men. When men and women work more than 40 hours per week, men out-earn women. The median earnings of both unmarried men and unmarried women who work more than 50 hours per week, the median actually comes in at $31,000 per year. I mean, there's even pay gaps within the genders themselves. The book says that willingness to do the uncomfortable shifts is one reason why married men earn about twice as much as what never married men earn. So after reading this, the biggest takeaway, at least for me, is that this is an incredibly nuanced issue, and you have to say why the pay gap exists in order to come up with a proper solution if you want to find a way to increase pay for not only women, but for men as well. I mean, there's a bunch of things in this book that list how you can increase your pay, and it's advice that both men and women can follow. And if you feel you've gotten value from this video so far, please like it, comment down below, let me know your thoughts, and as always, please subscribe to the channel for more content. I'd like to end this video with a little story, so gather around the campfire and bring out your marshmallows. The book talks about a Fortune 500 company who was being sued by a woman who did not get a promotion. The company hired a research company that was known for defending women in order to uncover the experiences and desires of its own employees. They surveyed 6,000 employees within the company, and here are a few things that they found. Nearly half of the women said that if they had a choice, they would choose to work part-time, while only 14% of the men felt that way. Lights are going out in here. Only 5% of the women clerks listed executive as one of their aspirations, while 4 times as many men were likely to list executive as one of their aspirations. Overall, men were twice as likely to request a promotion, but women were actually 25% more likely to get the promotions they requested, which is interesting. Like, I found myself asking, why were women 25% more likely to get a promotion if they asked for one than if a man asked for a promotion? So overall, I think we need to be much more meticulous and analytical when it comes to looking at pay discrepancies. Knowing that the pay gap goes both ways, depending on a variety of factors, I don't think it's helpful to conduct a surface level analysis when looking at the pay gap. I do think we should take claims of discrimination seriously, but I also think that we need to assume innocence until someone is proven guilty. But those are some of the tidbits from Why Men Earn More. To my knowledge, it's actually one of the few books that goes into years, like I think it was decades of research that the author did on this, and it's the most comprehensive analysis we have of the pay gap over time. And in my research, just looking on Amazon and looking up books that would go over this kind of thing to offer perspective on both sides, there really isn't a book that is this in-depth and hits the issue head on in the same way that this book does. If anybody does know of another book that I can read about this, or a study or article of whatever, please let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to research and do that. But thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time.